In this tutorial, we're looking at rules and common features pertaining to condominiums, commonly known as condos, and homeowners associations, commonly known as HOAs. All condos have HOAs that run them, but not all properties that involve an HOA are condos. We'll look at HOAs later in this tutorial. However, we'll begin by discussing what you need to know when buying a condo. But before we start, let's touch very quickly on what condo ownership means and why people consider buying condos. When you buy a condo, you own a shared interest in common areas, such as parking structures and shared yards, but hold exclusive interest in the title to your individual unit. In other words, everything inward from the outside walls of your unit is under your control, but you can't paint your front door white with red dots or cut down that ugly shrub outside your porch. The control of those areas is a democratic one belonging to all the owners combined. So even putting up brightly colored awnings is a decision you can't make by yourself. People buy condos because 1. They are generally cheaper than a detached single-family dwelling for the same location and size of home. 2. There's less maintenance of landscaping involved. You can enjoy the lush green views around your home without the burden of keeping up the landscaping, except for minor work on your own patio or private yard space. 3. Amenities are plentiful. For example, if you can't afford the cost of a pool but don't mind sharing, a community pool gives you access without the trouble of cleaning it, updating chemicals, or keeping up with local safety requirements. Many condo complexes also have gyms, saunas, and even tennis or racquetball courts. 4. There are often security features that you may not be able to privately afford, such as a gated entrance and night guards watching over cars and structures. In addition, since neighbors are usually plentiful and closer, some may argue that you're less likely to be the victim of burglary or some other crime. 5. If living close to the heart of a city or downtown area is important to you, condos are usually the only option because of the high cost of land associated with these areas. So what should homebuyers look for before buying a condo? Items like fees, funding, financing, rules and regulations, pending special assessments, management, legal actions, occupied units in your complex, ownership of amenities, and insurance policies are all factors that need to be considered. Let's look at these one by one. What's the monthly HOA fee and what does it cover? No two condominiums are alike. Monthly condo fees can vary considerably based on the number of units in the building, whether or not the condo is professionally or self-managed, and the age and condition of the building. Review and understand all documents before signing. Condominium rules and regulations differ depending on where you live. Rules regarding pets, renovations, and whether or not a tenant is allowed to rent out the unit can be prohibited depending on the condo area. Know where the money is. For example, every building requires a capital reserve fund, which is basically an insurance policy for capital repairs. At least 10% of the annual budget should be contained in the fund. There's a higher risk of special assessments being imposed on homeowners in a complex if the capital reserve account is poorly funded. Buyers need to determine how much money is in the capital reserve fund versus how much is funded annually. If at all possible, obtain a copy of the last 2 years' budget, the current reserve account, funding level, and any capital reserve study. Are there any special assessments pending? Find out whether or not any contemplated or pending special assessments or one-time fees for capital improvements are payable by every unit. Special assessments may cost thousands of dollars, and others may be million-dollar renovation projects. Do they plan on lining the roofs with pure gold only to leave you and your neighbors to foot the bill? Okay, jokes aside, ask to see the condominium minutes of meeting from the last 2 years to see what improvements have recently been discussed in those meetings. They may welcome you to the complex with open arms because you're going to share in the cost of that new underground parking garage that's coming soon. Having said that, remember some state laws, such as the 20% rule in California, restrict the percentage by which the annual HOA dues can increase in any given year. Are there any pending changes to bylaws? What if you discovered a week after you bought your condo and moved in your golden retriever and poodle that pets are soon to be prohibited? Or say each owner is about to be restricted to just one parking space? Are you going to be comfortable parking your car on the street? Know the management structure. Knowing whether the condominium is self-managed or managed by a professional management company is important. A professional management company adds cost, but can also add value to a condominium by running the common areas in an efficient manner. For example, management companies tend to have ongoing relationships with individual contractors who are hired to render services necessary to the proper maintenance of the complex and can usually negotiate better pricing. Self-managed complexes are run by board members who are volunteers and can often be unhelpful because they're not getting paid or inexperienced. Know about any pending legal actions. This is crucial, especially because legal disputes can signal trouble and poor management. Also, additional attorney's fees paid from the condo budget could result in a special assessment to individual owners like you. To check recent lawsuits, buyers can run a search of the condominium association in the local court database. The HOA might be in a lawsuit with the developer of the project, an individual or group of owners within the complex, or even the provider of building materials used to build the complex. Buyers should understand Fannie Mae and FHA financing methods. Buyers using conventional financing need to see if the condo is Fannie Mae approved. Buyers using FHA financing should check to see if the condo is FHA approved. Rules for financing condo purchases with FHA have tightened up over the past few years. For a condo to be eligible, no more than 15% of the units could have delinquent HOA dues, and no more than 49% of the units could be tenant occupied. In addition to this, no more than 30% of existing units could already have FHA loans on them, and no more than 10% of the units could be owned by the same investor or entity. As recent as 2011, HUD completely revamped its rules for allowing FHA financing on condos by rechecking each complex's eligibility. Many complexes that had been FHA approved years earlier lost their eligibility and could not become reapproved for a number of reasons. Read the master deed and unit deed for the condominium. These documents will help buyers understand ownership of certain amenities. For example, porches, decks, storage spaces, and parking spaces may be deeded to the unit owner. This means the unit owner would have responsibility for maintenance and repairs. In contrast, condos may have common areas where unit owners have the exclusive right to use, but the association pays for maintenance and repairs. Understanding the master insurance policy is key. Under this policy, most condominiums should have $1 million or more in coverage. Buyers always need to buy an individual HO6 policy. If you're not clear as to what this is, ask your insurance agent. This will allow the interior and unit contents, such as personal possessions, to be covered in case of an emergency that the master policy may not cover. Buyers need to ask for a copy of the master insurance policy. Make sure to check the fine print of the bylaws to completely understand your coverage. Condominiums over 20 units should also be protected against embezzlement by having fidelity insurance. You wouldn't want one of the owners taking off to Belize in the middle of the night with a few $1 million from the HOA fund. As we said earlier, all condo complexes have an HOA that governs them, but even properties that are not condos can have HOAs associated with them. In fact, studies show that approximately 50 million Americans live in association-governed homes or condos, and this number is growing. As a home buyer, you can't afford to be ignorant regarding HOAs and how they operate. HOAs can impose their rule on what many home buyers would consider the simplest of daily living matters: leaving the garage door open, planting a fern tree, having more than 2 dogs, flying the American flag, painting your curb with the house number, putting up a clothesline, or picking a certain color for curtains on your front window. We've already discussed how to assess an HOA and look for signs of trouble, but in the second part of this tutorial, let's look at other considerations pertaining to an HOA's presence. Monthly dues. What can a monthly HOA fee include? The monthly dues can cover various maintenance and communal amenities. These may include water, grounds maintenance and landscaping, trash disposal, insurance, cable television, sewage, clubhouse or other facility for business and social gatherings, property management fees, fitness center, tennis courts, pool or spa, parking, upkeep of walkways and roads within the development, security. Fees can vary from complex to complex and should be compared to other HOAs in the area. When comparing fees, be sure to take into account how one complex looks compared to another in terms of cosmetics. Don't be afraid to ask the representative or agent to justify the amount being charged. Rented units. It is not uncommon for renting or subleasing homes to be prohibited by the HOA bylaws. Generally, homeowners prefer to live in a community of fellow homeowners who have as much invested in the upkeep and value of the neighboring properties as they themselves do. Even mortgage guidelines set limitations on what percentage of properties within an HOA-ruled community can be occupied by renters as opposed to the owner. Generally, the HOA determines who can rent units, but they usually make the owner wait a period of 1 to 3 months before allowing rental tenants to occupy a unit. Delinquency rates on monthly dues. Check out the delinquency rates affecting the monthly HOA dues. If a high number of foreclosures and local unemployment exist, many HOAs may have trouble collecting monthly dues. This spells trouble in 2 ways. They may compensate by raising monthly dues overall, which affects you, of course. And secondly, they may have to put a temporary hold on certain services such as maintenance if they can't afford it. This results in a run-down look to the neighborhood and a possible drop in property values. How to handle disagreements with HOAs. Whether it's about your Christmas lights or a birdhouse in your front yard, disagreements with the HOA are likely to happen sooner or later. So here are some pointers on how to handle them if and when they occur. First and foremost, prevention is better than cure. This means read your HOA's bylaws and covenants and restrictions before you make changes to the outside of your home that may trigger a warning or something worse from the HOA. If you still think you're in the right, make a written notice and present it to the board at a local meeting, arguing your case. Include photographs whenever possible. If you can garner support from neighbors to side in with your cause, get their signatures and consent in writing. This would add weight to your argument, whatever it is. If the HOA declines to see your point of view, realize that not all disagreements need to wind up in court. Before you resort to legal action and expose yourself to legal fees and the hassle of courtroom drama, consider consulting with an HOA consultant that's experienced in advising on these matters. They may be able to offer guidance on alternative methods of resolving the matter. One more step before legal action is actually already written into a lot of HOA rules, that of using a dispute resolution service or mediator to solve the matter. If your cause just can't help but land in court, to lower your costs, consider identifying other owners in your community who share your views or are affected by the HOA's decision about your situation and see if they'll file suit with you. In closing, we should say that despite the stigma associated with HOAs, they are ultimately there to protect the neighborhood and property values in general. After all, they're run by the very people that live in your community, your neighbors. Historically, it is true that HOAs help preserve property values by eliminating actions of neighbors that damage curb appeal and even alienate potential newcomers. Learning all you can about an HOA and a community before you choose to buy there makes you a smart home buyer. And there is no better source of information about a community than the residents. The relationship between property owners and the HOA can either be positive or negative, and a talkative resident will not hesitate to let you know how they feel about theirs. Look for people working in their yards or coming home from work and appeal to their neighborly instinct to get a good idea about the truth of a community before you buy into it. Thank you for watching, and be sure to contact the featured real estate professional who provided you with this informative video tutorial.